Holy crap! This encounter is way too hard! We're all gonna die!
Yeah, this sucks. We just got our intern here, and we're already gonna bite it.
You know, maybe we need to get the rogue back. He does a lot more stabbing than Gary does.
I think the person really to blame is our dungeon master. I mean, what was he thinking, making this battle so hard?
Wow, this fight is going a lot better than I thought it was. We might actually live.
Yeah, that's crazy! It's amazing how swingy this game is.
I'm sure glad we're doing better now. I was really worried there for a minute.
You weak-minded fools! Don't you see what's happening? He's using an old dungeon master mind trick.
Welcome to the DM Lair. I'm Lucar, and I've been a Dungeon Master since high school. On this channel, I give practical Dungeon Master advice that you can implement at your game table. So it's a pretty well-known fact that D&D's challenge rating system, by which a Dungeon Master is supposed to be able to calculate and create appropriately challenging encounters for their players, is a hot, flaming mess. At levels 1 and 2, it's borked. It works fairly well from levels 3 to 8, and then at that point again starts to fall apart. What this means is a dungeon master might plan for an encounter to be easy by punching the math, but then it turns into something deadly. Or the DM wanted a challenging boss fight, but it turns into a pushover. There are also other elements at play. The look of the dice, players not being tactfully minded, players making bad decisions, players taunting the dungeon master, stuff like that. So when an encounter takes a turn for the worse, either way, you can do one of two things. Do nothing and let things play out by the rules, or adjust things on the fly so that the encounter actually fits the level of challenge the Dungeon Master was going for in the first place. If you're in the first camp, do nothing, then you don't need this video, and you might even think that DMs who adjust things on the fly are cheating. However, if you do want to adjust encounters on the fly because you're tired of having TPKs to random encounters, or having big bag evil guys that never survive the first round of combat, you're in the right place. That said, I do want to make it clear that I don't always adjust encounter difficulty on the fly. In fact, I usually don't. For the majority of battles, it's okay if they're a little easier or harder than intended. I generally only step in when we're talking about a boss battle, or I personally screwed up. See, I'm okay making the players pay for their own mistakes, but I'd rather not have them pay for my mistakes. Now, before we jump in, I just want to remind you that my fellow nerds, Dave and Ted, over at Nerdarchy, are still accepting late pledges for their Out-of-the-Box Encounters Kickstarter. If you're not familiar with it, it basically gives you a crap ton of awesome encounters that you can drop anywhere into your ongoing campaign. So, when your players go off the rails and wander somewhere you never expected, and you need to stall for time until you can figure things out, just grab an encounter out of this book. Or you're pressed for time before a game session and need a few quick things to throw in the session. Again, grab some encounters from it. I'll throw a link to their Kickstarter down below for those of you who may be interested in this. Also, and this is really exciting for me, they're starting up their own Nerdarchy convention, and I'm planning on being there. The timing is looking like late October of 2020, but I'll share more information as it approaches. Okay, enough of that. Let's get back to what we're supposed to be talking about around here, adjusting encounters. And the first thing that I want to address are anti-patterns. That is, things you may be tempted to do, but that I strongly recommend against. First, fudging dice. You can do this, but I avoid it at all costs. I personally hate using fudged dice to change outcomes. In fact, for clutch moments, I roll my DM dice in the middle of the battle map so that everyone can see that I'm playing it straight. In my opinion, there are far better ways to cultivate the game than fudging dice. In all honesty, I kind of view fudging dice as the lazy man's out. An NPC rescuer. Okay, I'll be blunt. I hate that crap. Having an NPC rescue your players from a tight bind is the single best way to make your players feel like they suck and can't handle things on their own. I mean, sure, they actually can't, but part of the art of DMing is making your players feel awesome. and an NPC rescuer spits all over that. It also takes the spotlight away from them. Oh, look at this awesome NPC that just rescued us. I'm sorry, that's lame in my book. I'd rather have my monsters walk all over the PC's cold, dead bodies than send an NPC to rescue them. Now, I'm never one to tell you how to run your game, so if you really want to do this, it's not like I'm gonna show up at your doorstep and confiscate your Dungeon Master guide or anything, but I might just show up and bonk you over the head with it. How I recommend that you do adjust encounters on the fly. Hey, shut up! Cat's snoring over there. Number 1, spread attacks over multiple PCs. This one is pretty easy. Basically, if you focus all of your monster's attacks on one PC, he's going to drop very fast. However, if you spread your attacks over all of the PCs, then they're going to stay up and running, fighting in the battle for much longer. So if the battle is going very easy for your players and you want to make it a little more challenging, have your enemies focus fire. And the converse is true. If you need it to be easier for your players, have your enemies spread their damage around the group. Number 2, adjusting hit points. Who says that Frost Giant has 127 hit points? Where is that written? Okay, yes, it's in the Dungeon Master guide, but the Dungeon Master has 100% freedom to change those numbers. If you can change them before an encounter, you can certainly change them during an encounter. Not too long ago, I had an encounter where I deployed 2 Remorazes and 2 Oni against my players. And holy crap, let me tell you that it was way too much. So I started to adjust the hit points of the Remorazes down just a little bit so they would die faster. Likewise, if I had an enemy who was dying too fast, I would just give them a little bit more hit points. Number 3, change how you roleplay the monsters. Basically, the heart of this technique is to adjust how you're running the monsters in battle based upon whether you need the battle to be a little bit more difficult or easier. Have your monsters use advanced and intelligent tactics when you need a harder battle. And if something turns out to be way too hard, back off a little bit and have them use less advanced tactics. And here's an example for you. In that same battle with the Remorazes and Ani, at a certain point in the battle, when I noticed the players were way in over their heads, I had the Oni turn invisible instead of attacking the PCs. This was not the most optimal choice for them, but it gave my players 1 round during which the Oni were not attacking them. Number 4. Adjust the monster's special abilities. Instead of being able to cast a spell 3 times a day, they can only do it 1 time a day. And is that dragon way too challenging? Well, then it can only breathe fire once for the entire combat. And obviously, if you need things to be just a little bit more challenging, give them some more uses of their special abilities. I have been known on occasion to invent special abilities on the fly for my monsters. I'll be in the middle of combat, and an idea will occur to me to have a monster do something really cool. So I just make it happen. And I decide what the rules are for that cool thing right there in the middle of the combat. As long as you do this smoothly, your players will have no idea that you're doing this. They'll think that you customized the monster beforehand to do these things. And in the actual gameplay terms, there's no difference between making these changes beforehand or making them during the combat. Either way, the changes happen. Number 5. Give a monster legendary actions when it looks like a fight is too easy, or don't use the legendary actions if the fight's too hard. This is kind of similar to our previous point, but it really only applies to boss fights, in my opinion. You can't really just go around giving any old creature legendary actions. Well, I mean, you can, but you probably shouldn't. Of course, what do I know? Maybe you should. Maybe it's okay. Maybe you should just ignore me and do whatever you want. Number 6, use waves. The essence of waves of enemies is that you reveal only a few of the enemies at the start of a combat. Then in round 2 or 3, more enemies arrive. Then maybe more arrive in round 4. Waves can be used anytime really, but they often happen when the sounds of combat alert nearby enemies. Anyway, the trick is this. When a combat is going too easy, have some more monsters arrive. It could just be a couple more of the monsters that are already fighting. Or if you have waves planned and the fight is too hard, then just don't have some of the waves arrive. Call it a day after 1 wave or 2 waves. Number 7, say yes to the last-ditch efforts of your players. Here's basically what happens when a battle looks hopeless for your players. They start strategizing and thinking of possible ways out with a almost religious fervor. And they're probably going to end up trying one of their crazy ideas. So when they do this, this is what you do. You allow it to work. There's nothing written in the book that says the solution to a dungeon master's problem has to come from the dungeon master. If your players hand you the solution all gift wrapped and pretty and nice like, take it. For instance, when my players were freaking out in the fight with the Remorazes and Ani, they decided to use Dispel Magic on the Oni, hoping it would cause their permanent fly ability to stop working. Now, in my personal opinion, I don't think that it should have worked. However, because they were desperate and the battle was going very, very poorly against them, I allowed it to work. Number 8, have the monsters flee. This one is pretty straightforward and easy. I mean, most enemies don't want to die, so having the bad guys run away makes sense a lot of times. Even if your players feel like they're getting the crap kicked out of them, it might only take 1 or 2 enemies going down before the rest of them lose morale and break. And this could be something that you use to make a difficult battle easier. And this is something that I did in the Remoraz and Oni battle. I ended up having one of the Onis run away. There's also another reason I often use this tactic, to be perfectly honest, because it makes my players freak out. Their immediate response to enemies trying to run away is almost always, oh crap, they're going to get reinforcements. And then there's this mad scramble to prevent them from getting away. And that's tons of fun. Let me know how you adjust difficulty on the fly. Next week, I'll be telling you about a time my players conscripted their own monstrous army of orcs, ogres, and giants. But until then, click right here to binge on the rest of my encounter creation videos. And until next time, let's play D&D.